This is Do It For a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
Welcome back to another episode of the Do It For a Living podcast. I'm Kevin Dubois. This week we have a guest. His name is Brandon Piper of BSP Motorsports. Anyway, before we get started, I wanted to give everybody an update with MSA here. So I have a new video up on the YouTube channel that kind of walks you through the task report that we have built into the software. So if you are either a current MSA user or if you're wondering what it does, basically if you have a task that you do repeatedly, so like a machine shop that, bores a block, or maybe you install coilovers on cars, anything that is kind of a repeatable process, if you use it in MSA and track time on it, we have a report that builds out historical data for that report. So it will show you your number of times completed, average time, and then your margin on it based off your estimated versus actual averages. Anyway, it makes it very easy for you to adjust your pricing. So if you are underestimating things, it's very obvious in the report. Or if you are overcharging for stuff, that also will be obvious. And anyway, you can use the report to adjust those pricing and make sure everything you do is making you money, essentially. So you can't run a business if you're losing money on stuff, and this is a way to help that. So check it out on the YouTube channel. It's just called Using the MSA Task Report to Properly Charge for Services. Okay, and so now let's get back to our guest with Brandon here and enjoy the podcast. All right. I have with me today Brandon Piper of BSP Motorsports. Brandon has been a customer of mine in the past, but I've had the privilege of kind of watching him grow into the fantastic business he's got right now. And we're actually on location at his building here in, this Denton-ish area of Texas.
Aubrey, yep.
So, Brandon, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Yeah, I was going to say, when I first met you, we met through Evos. I think it was like 2007, 2008, when you first got your white one and you were starting to develop, learn about it and tune them and, do mods to them.
Yeah, and tracking out at Motorsport Ranch. I think that's where you... Well, why don't you go ahead and tell us, how did you get involved in motorsports? Even before you got involved in a business, you were obviously in cars. Kind of tell us where that all came from.
So let's see, where do I start? I always have been into cars, or really just anything that's mechanical. When I was a kid, I'd get a bike for Christmas and I would end up taking it apart before I'd even ride it. So always been interested in that. And then as I grew up, I got into go-peds and modifying two-stroke engines and going fast on go-peds. But essentially how I got into cars, obviously always being kind of a gearhead and be interested in that. But got my first car obviously at 16 in high school, and worked at a Valvoline instant oil change place. And by the time I was 18, I was the manager of the building or the store. And
so real quick, 2 years?
Seriously, I started in the pit at 16. I was in a co-op program with high school. And, by the time I was 18, I was the store manager. And I was like, man, this can't be this is not it. Selling, air filters and stuff like that was not really going to be my cup of tea. So I decided I think it was 2010, I believe, to go to a trade school. So I ended up choosing Wyotech. As the one that was in. And now, unfortunately, I think Wyotech is kind of pretty dissolved. Yep. I think they still have some schools or locations, but the one that I went to was in Sacramento, California. And that's where I really wanted to get my hands on. I'm a more of a hands-on learner. You can give me a book all day long, but I want to touch it and feel it and do it. So went to trade school and at Wyotech, and of course you got shop time and book time and all that kind of stuff. But graduated from there, did a chassis fabrication program there as well as a high performance powertrain.
Yeah, they do a little bit what's the other one? UTI. They are just really, really just generic repair. And the Wyotech has more advanced stuff, I feel. Because you're not the first person that said that I've talked to that has done that before, where they kind of teach you to weld some stuff, and they do like more advanced race car stuff.
Yeah, they have they're elective programs. So you have your core automotive program, and then you take extra electives, which is hot rod. So you're learning how to chop tops and weld 4 links and doing stuff like that. They had obviously the welding program as well as the high performance program where we're putting turbo kits and nitrous and running on the dyno and doing stuff like that. So essentially went through school and came back to Texas, and I learned really quick that it's not so much what you know, but who you know in this industry. So, thinking that my first job was going to be start out on a race team, or I was going to, do something, a dream job off the get-go is obviously not something that happened. So, I started, I was just a lead mechanic at Goodyear, I was just doing normal stuff. And, I actually met a customer that had a Dodge Viper.
Yep.
And this is what starts it all with the Vipers. But he came in, he had like a customer supplied part, which of course Goodyear wouldn't do. And it was a wheel bearing or something like that he wanted replaced on his wife's car. And, Goodyear turned him down and said, hey, we don't do that. So I had the opportunity to slide in my numbers, said, hey, I can definitely do that for you, on the side. So I went to his house. I think it was that night actually. And changed the wheel bearing out on his wife's Viper. I mean, it was a unitized wheel bearing, so it bolts in. I mean, It was pretty easy stuff. And then he had a, 3-car garage, and he had like it was another Viper underneath the car cover. And I was starting to ask him about, like, what's that? Whatever. Had a huge wing on it. Anyway, so that was his ACR X race car that he had. And he said that he did a lot of amateur racing, traveling the country, going to all the different places. And he was kind of impressed with my knowledge and, my, I guess, people skills or whatever. And he's like, honestly, if this will work out, I want to hire you through my software company, and I want you to be my personal mechanic, and you just travel with me. Okay. So I was like, okay. Again, I was 22 at the time, I think. And I was like, yeah.
A great in.
Oh, yeah. No, like that was the in. So I was like, okay, cool. And then my first race, we went to Daytona. So the same circuit that, the Rolex runs. And that was my first experience. We load up in the truck. He had a 50-foot trailer with a living quarters and a garage, and we loaded everything up and went to Daytona. So my first experience was Daytona, like in the infield, all these really high-end cars and, running 180 miles an hour around the ring at Daytona. So that was kind of that was my in. That was kind of how I got it all established and set up. And then from there, I just kept kind of working for him, kept, maintaining his cars, personal cars and race cars. And then, after the one thing about racing is, you have off seasons, I mean, you got a season when you're working a whole lot, and then a season when there's not really a lot of stuff going on. So, from there, that's when I decided to quit Goodyear, go kind of racing full time. Still needed to, pick up odds and ends. So kind of was doing side work and things like that. And then, this guy ended up getting another race car, which didn't fit in his garage anymore. So the wife's like, look, get all your stuff out of the garage. You need to go get your own little unit or whatever to hold all this stuff. And that's essentially where BSP started. I mean, I decided, obviously to continue to work with him. He got a storage unit. He bought a lift. And that's where I kept all my tools. That's where I kept everything. And then he's like, well, this will give you an opportunity to where if you can talk to him about working for myself and being an entrepreneur. And he's like, well, this will be your opportunity. So I kind of took with that and ran with it. Took me about 3 months to start kind of paying my way, in the building, So
you're working out of his facility.
Yeah, I mean, he was renting out a 1,500 square foot space.
Okay.
That had 1 2-post lift in it.
I gotcha.
And he stored both his race cars in it.
Okay.
And then I was able to, when I wasn't working for him,
do one car at a time, sort of thing.
Yep. Kind of knock out some stuff. He, Kevin was really big into Vipers, so he's like, "Look, we need to get you sponsoring the DFW, or at the time it was the North Texas Viper Club." So I did some events with them. I sponsored the club. People started bringing me their Vipers, and I'm kind of self-taught when it comes to the Vipers. I didn't get any Mopar official training,
Sure.
but when you're road racing and you've got deadlines and got to get back on track and all that, you kind of you got to learn pretty quick.
And there's different requirements than the guys that just do like the dealership Viper stuff.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, again, like this guy's going 180 miles an hour around a racetrack, and his life is depending on the work that I do to his car.
Yep.
I mean, you can't leave things loose. I mean, there's no room for error, more or less. So, but that's kind of how I operate. I'm a very attention to detail kind of guy. I always have been. So it worked out really well. So yeah, that's where essentially BSP was established in March of 2013. And now we're working on here in March. It'll be 12 years.
Yep. Okay, so you went from that one facility. I thought it was close to like Motorsport Ranch too, is it not?
No, it was in Frisco.
Oh, Frisco. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Now I did a lot of work at Motorsport Ranch.
That's why I always remember seeing you at Motorsport Ranch working on Vipers. I just assumed that your location was there because they have a lot of like suites that shops rent out of there. So
Yep. Yeah, and there's a couple of guys that he ran with, and other drivers that had units, had their own garages. So I mean, again, I kind of was pretty mobile in the beginning, where I'd go out to the track.
Yeah.
I change out your transmission, do some track prep or whatever you needed. Obviously, crew for guys that wanted to do testing and tire pressures and tire pyrometer stuff and all that. So and that's kind of where we saw each other a lot.
Yep.
As you were
we used to
the
back
Evos.
then. I used to do a lot of road racing at the Evo Club.
Yep.
So yeah, we would go out there all the time, have tons of fun at all the like NASA events, and there was like private Evo days that the Don Herring dealership would rent the track out there, and the toy run at Eagles Canyon and all kinds of fun. I mean, I that was the most fun I ever had with my business, was when we supported all the track cars. And now I regret kind of regressing into more of just like a mechanic role, just fixing them. Fixing them and never having fun with them is not nearly as cool as going out to the track. But.
Definitely not as cool, but as I've learned, especially now, having a wife and now having kids and all that, the track definitely pulls you from home, and it is super expensive.
Yep.
I mean, normally it was every major holiday, whether it be Labor Day or Valentine's Day or whatever, we were at the track. I mean, we were always testing, we were always racing, traveling, doing all that stuff. So I agree with you that working on your street cars is not as exciting and all that, but it just serves also a purpose too as well when it comes to family.
All right, so you were working for this guy essentially as an employee, working on his car. So I mean, that's probably the best transition you could possibly get, kind of moving into your own shop where he's basically shepherding you into the role, right?
Absolutely.
So how did you transition from using his building to your own, like to start your own, like where you're paying your rent?
So when we first moved in, again, it took me about 3 months to kind of get a little bit of a clientele base and start to generate some revenue, some income. And I was very proud of myself to okay, he's giving me this opportunity, and then I don't want to take advantage of it. So it took me about 3 months to then start paying. We kind of divided out the square footage of the shop. So if his cars took up 500 square feet of the shop, then I would pay rent on 1,000.
Okay.
And that's kind of what we were doing. So by the first year, I want to say, not even, I was almost kind of kicking him out of that unit. I was like, hey man, the lift is here, everything's here, they've got some other units available in the complex. Let's move your cars over there, and then you can pay for that unit. And I still have access to your stuff. And he had a buddy at the time that needed a place to store a car as well. So him and a friend were able to, split rent or whatever. But I took over that unit.
Okay.
And I think I was only in that unit for maybe a year. And then I needed to scale and grow a little bit and get a bigger spot, because 1,500 square feet is, for a one-man operation, it works. But, we were starting to get pretty busy and get a lot of customers to where I needed to move into a double. So I pretty much in the same complex, a 3,000 square foot unit became available, and I jumped on.
Was that the same one that you were in the whole time?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, it's way bigger than 1,500 square feet. So you went from the little storage one that was on the side where you kept cars in there and equipment, And then you moved into the larger one that I always remember you working out of, right?
Well,
that's kind of that one.
It was in the same. So the 1,500 square foot building, or the unit, was in another building, and then when I moved over to the 3,000, that was in a totally different building. So I left. Excuse me. Left the 1,500 square foot, moved into a 3,000. And then what you're talking about, the other 15, was me adding on to that building. So, after about 2 more years of working in a 3,000, we needed more space, I think in 2019. And I took over, because these buildings are divided out, partitioned. So I had a 3,000, and then the unit next to me was a 1,500. So I took over that and then, knocked a hole in the wall and started using the 2 spaces together, more or less.
And I don't want to skip ahead, but just for reference, you're now in this new building here, which is 10,000 square feet.
Yep.
And we'll talk a bunch about that because this is quite the story. But let's kind of stick on track here with like your growth and the business. So kind of give us a rundown of like the number of employees you've had. So you've scaled that as you've gone up too. I mean, it's
absolutely.
not just you.
Obviously in the 1,500, I realized that like I'm only one man, especially being the office person and the janitor and the mechanic and, doing all that. So I try to kind of play with doing like a contract, employee where, a guy was a mechanic and I'd 1099 him pretty much to just help me work on cars. But when I moved over to the 3,000 square foot is when I actually took on my first W-2 employee where I was like, okay, I need to have another tech. We ran me and this other guy for, I don't know, probably another 2 more years before we then started like, okay, now I can't sit here and write quotes all day long, but also work on cars. So then we started kind of scaling it. Okay. So for the majority of all that, it was myself and 2 other people, 1 office person and one other mechanic.
Okay.
And then again, as we opened up that other 1,500 side, in the 3,000, so it made it a total of 4,500 square feet. I, just started slowly but surely kind of taking on more employees and taking that risk of, it's a big responsibility because you also have other people's lives and families, riding on the business and making sure that, we can all produce. So
right. And so the type of work you're doing, clearly it's not just Vipers anymore. There still are Vipers here and you still do a lot with that, but you've got everything now. And what's the core of your work? Kind of give us a breakdown of what you do. So
essentially, like when I started the road racing thing, I really jumped into suspension. So suspension geometry, how the suspension moves dynamically with the car, whether it be drag racing, road racing, highway, roll stuff or whatever. So my specialty has always been suspension. That's where all my knowledge went into. Of course, doing performance work, headers and superchargers and stuff like that. We can do that too as well. But like I said, really where I dominate is going to be in suspension. So that's essentially what I took on, was just doing a lot of suspension work, lowering cars, setting up cars on coilovers, setting up track cars, corner balancing, scaling, ride height. Doing all that kind of stuff.
Okay. And in this new building, you've got 2 alignment racks. So clearly you got enough business for that.
Yeah. So when we were in that 3,000 square foot unit, when I took over the other 1,500 to make it 45, we had at the time, 4 lifts. So we had 1 alignment machine, which is the 4-post, and then 3 2-post lifts. And we did, I did that for 5 years in that particular, area. I really wanted to maximize the profits and growth that I could in the unit I was in before, trying to expand and go bigger. And we kind of by, I want to say even by 2022, I reached that point to where it's like I couldn't do any more in that unit. We were literally pulling out probably 10 to 15 cars a day, because everything stays inside, all the cars that we work on. So at night, like nothing gets left outside. So my shop could only support so many cars at one time. So we, kind of ended up actually hitting our, we'll talk about that, but hitting our $1 million gross sale marker in that unit. And I just, like I said, I was kind of capped. So, of course, always kind of being very competitive and with myself and just wanting to keep growing, is when we started looking into like, okay, let's find a bigger building and how we can kind of scale where we're at now, or where we were to where I'm at now, which is just kind of scaling everything and getting a bigger space.
Okay, so let's dive into this. So, you kind of plan all this out. It's not just kind of on a whim, kind of deciding what to do. And you have a coach as well. You said in our conversation before this, we started the podcast. But go into the planning that you have done into deciding when to hire people. Making sure you're efficient enough. What kind of decision making are you doing? Do you have a formal business plan? The coach? How does this all work for you?
So, I believe a lot in myself as far as what I'm capable of doing, but there was a couple of things that I felt like I was getting in the way of myself on as far as growing, and I was just looking for some kind of guidance. Did a lot of research on business coaches and found, interviewed with a couple people. A lot of them were more corporate. So It was like, oh, you need to do almost like a handbook and, make it all like corporate-y. And I'm like, look, I'm a, performance shop that's, one man owned, like this doesn't really work.
You don't need the hierarchy of employees,
exactly.
right?
So I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work. So anyways, I found my coach now, Dave Moreno. He, first met him, I think we were doing $250,000 in sales.
Okay, so real early then.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I've been with him now for 5 years. So,
okay.
But just the growth and the scale of that has been phenomenal.
Sure.
And just really, I learned a lot where like if there's any issues with the business, it's probably issues with the business owner. So I did a lot of what was really cool about the opportunity to have with Dave was being able to really work on yourself, right?
Okay.
Work on self-development, just really self-growth.
Explain.
I mean, again, your only limitations is going to be yourself and what you think. So if you can, have a little bit of some control over that, then you're going to be able to be a whole lot better off when it comes to making decisions, taking risks, taking calculated risks, whatever the case may be there. So we worked a lot on just, like I said, self-development when it comes to how I think, how I operate, how I react, doing things like that. So he's also, helped me a lot with, business plans, set up goals, someone just, I really needed somebody just to hold me accountable, which, he was definitely able to do. So he had, worksheets and he had all kinds of things. We talked a little bit about this before we started the podcast, but I have some goals that I set up probably 4 years ago. And, the idea of really trying to manifest what you want is going to be using all of your senses. So like, what does it feel like? What does it taste like? What does it smell like? What do you visually see? So I just, on a piece of paper, I was like, look, I want to, in the next 3 years, I want to at least make $1 million in sales. I want to have, if I close my eyes, like what kind of a shop would I have? I'm like, what does it look like? A glass storefront with, my logo on the door, and I at least want 7,500 square feet because I knew what I was able to do out of 4,500. And I'm like, okay, we definitely need at least double that if we can. And what's crazy is 5 years later, we're in this new place and it has a glass storefront and it has, it's just like, all these things that I put on paper that I was visualizing and what I really was setting goals for, the universe, I guess, kind of provided, and it just fell in my lap. It was nothing that I did like, oh, well, this was, I want this building because that's the part of, what was on my goal sheet. Yeah. It just all kind of happened and fell in my lap like that.
So let's go into this. It sounds like you went from 250 to $1 million in like 3 years.
Yeah.
So it was really fast.
Yeah. Big jumps when it comes to managing employees, really. Because I started this business going, okay, cool. I can work on cars. I can be my own boss.
Yep.
And I can set my own schedule. Like, this is awesome. Like, why would I not want to do that? And then as you grow, you're like, oh shit, now I need to become a CPA. Like, I got to figure out finances and budgeting and bookkeeping. And, then as you hire employees, you become more of a manager of managing people and, delegating work and holding people accountable and responsible. And so like it was it took me, from So yeah, it was like 6 years. Like I was on my own path for about 6 years of just trying to figure it out all on my own. And then that's where I was able to get to was the $250,000 marker. Okay. And then once I got the coach, man, we were able to grow substantially. I mean, I think I did the next year after having a coach was 560,000, and then I did 720 or 760 or 80, something like that.
Okay.
And then in my fourth year is when I was able to break the $1 million.
So it was really largely making sure your employees were being efficient, tracking the work you're doing on the cars, and essentially like managing the work better. Was it like a huge growth in vehicles coming through? Is that all just kind of a part of it?
Yeah, it was kind of a part of it. I mean, obviously for what we do in the sector, the, kind of niche that we're in is not so much where I can do, I'm going to send out a bunch of mail flyers.
Right.
And,
Just like you always wonder, like, is it just advertising? Like, do you do like Google ads and get 10,000 more customers through the door or what?
I've tried doing the mail-in stuff and you get about a 1% return. So, say you mail out 100 little flyers, you might get one, maybe. So I tried different things, but I mean, really what we've grown on is the quality of work that we provide, I've always kind of our motto is just being above average.
Okay.
It's like, look, we're not just your average mechanic shop. I mean, we're definitely above average. We, the procedures and the processes that we do, are definitely above and beyond what your normal, automotive.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of people, since you do alignments, right? So everybody's able to compare what an alignment is, right? So everybody knows you can go to like Firestone and get an alignment for $99 for a 1 year, like.
Yeah, and they're touching the toe. They're adjusting the toe, and they're making sure the steering wheel is straight.
And I think we all know that. Like it's a junk. Oftentimes, I feel like they don't even do anything at all. They just kind of drive it back there, put it on the alignment rack, and give you a printout.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean your alignments are significantly more expensive. But like that's the reason I drive 20 miles to get it done is because you drive it before, you align it, you drive it after. And then you go tweak it if you need to. You put weights in the seat if you need to. Like, you do everything that those guys don't even know how to do. And you can do cars with camber plates, which a lot of general repair guys don't even know what they are and won't touch them.
Yeah.
And it's just like, there's a lot of like stupidly simple stuff that those guys won't even do that is just like second nature to you that, oh, those guys don't know how to do that. And then there's some things that are like way complex. So like corner balancing cars is much harder than people think it is because it's, like you have to have the weight in the right place as far as where the driver goes. And, if you do it when the gas tank's empty, then you add 80, 90 gallons or 80, 90 pounds of gas to it, then it shifts it all over the place again,
Yeah,
so it's just all kinds of stuff that people don't think about and you just have to have the experience to do.
And that's where the road racing gave me all that experience.
Right.
When I was working with Kevin and the road racing, I mean, we went all over the country. I mean, I've got to see Sebring and Road America and Road Atlanta, and we got to go all over the place, and that's where I really started learning how to. I mean, my first alignments I was doing at the shop before getting my alignment machine was strings,
yeah,
and camber gauges.
That's the way to learn, right?
Oh, I know. I mean, that's as raw as it gets, but it also takes 8 hours. I mean, to do it properly, because anytime you jack a tire up, then you got to settle that corner back down and make sure it's kind of in its home where it needs to be. But yeah, I mean, that I do, I guess, maybe take that for granted is the knowledge in suspension is second nature to me. You know, when it comes to what caster is, what camber is, what roll centers are, what works, what doesn't work, learning how to set up a car. Like if, I have a driver that's saying, hey, my car is pushing, on exit or it's pushing in a turn. And I'm like, okay, well, define pushing. Like, where is it pushing? Is it pushing in braking zones? Is it pushing in turn in? Is it apex? Is it, exiting a turn? Because there's like all these different sectors of that turn is going to tell me what the car is doing and what it doesn't like and what we need to adjust or change.
Right. And so then, I mean, that's part of like, what you do with this alignment is being more expensive is all this time. So you have to understand like how much time you're putting into it to know what to charge for, right? So like you know that your product essentially is a very premium, very high end thing. And so how do you market that to I mean, like Viper people are willing to do it, but are like Honda people? Are you getting general like just normal everyday cars coming through here?
Yeah, I mean we do. Again, we're not for everybody. You know, I mean I don't know how many times I've been told like, oh, that's too expensive. I can go get the $99 lifetime warranty, and I'm like, well, if that's what you need, then that works for you. Like it doesn't hurt my feelings because again, what we're gonna do is, I mean, the specs that I use and all my employees know is like, hey, I want every corner to be within a 1/10 of a degree of camber of each other, within a 100th of a degree of toe of each other. So when you have a alignment sheet, it's like, oh, it's in the green, but there's a half degree, full degree window of what's green.
And the sheet's going off what the OEM spec is a lot of times too, right? So which may not be anywhere close to what you need for a race car.
Yep. So I mean, but I still have, I mean, it was kind of funny when the EVs and Tesla came out with the Model 3s and all that. No one wanted to touch them. And, and a lot of people wanted to, it's not like you can do performance, modifications to them, because they're all electric and all that, but people wanted to lower them. People wanted to put coilovers on them. They wanted to track them and, do all that. So we took on early on a bunch of Tesla work too as well. And now, I've kind of just got the name where, you go to the Tesla Facebook pages or the, Tesla forums and you're like, hey, who do you go to? Go to BSP. Because, I mean, we just, again, have really kind of dominated that sector as far as getting people. My whole thing is results, right? I mean, like, I'm not going to feel comfortable and have the morals of charging, double of what a normal shop would charge for an alignment, but not have the customer feel what they're paying for.
Right. Yeah, you're adding value by you're making sure that when they take it home, it's working properly.
Yeah.
And maybe not 100% of the time, but I feel like those other guys don't even get it 50% of the time, right? So they're just kind of like set the toe and go, like you're saying. And with the Teslas, they're like notorious for like wearing tires really badly. And you've done probably so many of them, you understand exactly what to do. And even if there's like aftermarket parts required, like I know we interviewed Sasha before this, and I know you deal with his products a lot.
Yeah,
so.
Mountain Pass is one of our number one choices when it comes to the Tesla parts. And him and I have had in Jesse too as well, one of the sales guys. We got a great relationship, and just selling their product, installing their product. I mean, the big kicker is, I think he actually posted on Facebook not even a day or so ago, but somebody had installed one of their arms backwards, but like on the arm, it's lasering and etched, top and bottom, and it's like somebody paid a repair facility to put this arm on, and they didn't even put it on right. So. Right. It's kind of like that saying that goes like, hey, it's, $20 for the hammer, but you got to know where to swing it kind of a deal. Yep. So, but yeah, just taking that suspension knowledge, and then obviously if you work with a vendor like Mountain Pass, you kind of build the reputation of, okay, these guys know what they're doing. Yeah. I mean, we have customers that give us feedback of going, hey, you referred BSP to us and they were great. Like, thank you for that. Because I didn't know I was in the DFW area and I had no idea who was going to install this stuff.
Yeah. And it's fortunate for you. There is an absolute shit ton of Teslas around here. Yes. There are so many of them. Absolutely. I feel like it's California, just where the DFW area they're everywhere. So,
yep.
Okay, so we kind of talked about your 1 year and 5 year plan, and you've hit those goals going in through 5 years. You said. So do you keep revising them? Like, do you have a new 5 year plan?
Yeah, my some of my goals for this year is to kind of recreate some of those, or not recreate, but establish new goals. Yeah, I mean, like right. I've established goals and I've hit them, and I'm not like, okay, shit.
What next?
Yeah, like what do we do now? So now it's kind of sitting down and again just kind of visualizing what it looks like in another 5 years. Like where do we want to go? What do we want to do? And just sitting down. I for anybody that's listening, it's like I don't know how many times that I've like, oh, I've got that in my head, or whatever. Like it's best to put it on paper. You really want to put it on paper. It solidifies it. It really makes it to where it's something that you can be achieved and you can go back and look at.
It does, yeah. And I've done mine for this year for the software. I've done my own personal goals, and I started to work on the Evolution Dynamics ones. I need to kind of revise them a little bit still, but yeah, I mean, I think that's the best way to do it. Now, I haven't done it for a long time, as I've mentioned in the other podcasts, and I think.
We need to get on that.
I know, but like
it holds you accountable,
and
sir.
It's really obvious because like growth was nothing, or like I stagnated really bad, and then now you see it when you actually sit down and look at your reports of like revenue for the shop. It's like, okay, well, I did the same for 10 years in a row. Like, do something different or stop doing it altogether, right? Like, unless you're really happy with it. And I was like, I've always put a lot of time into it, but it was never quite enough what I wanted it to be, and I guess that's kind of where I struggled. So,
and that's where the coach had really helped me, because I'm putting money. I'm spending money to have him, and it's like I want to do something with it, right? I don't want to just throw money and not do anything with it. So it kind of like forces you to like, okay, well, I'm going to make the best of the situation that I have, and kind of moving forward with allowing him to kind of help me navigate growth and navigate my own things that kind of get in the way. I mean, I definitely can say that I'm probably a better business owner and a better employer now than I was 5 years ago, for sure. And just like I said, a lot of it's reaction to stuff. When somebody break something or whatever, it's not going to be beneficial to rip someone's head off in the shop and, make them feel like shit. It's like, okay,
then they're not going to, this is an unpleasant place to work, and then you're not going to give full effort on it too. So, all right. So what are you doing to manage the business? So you have a service manager, you have a front office girl, and software. What are you all using for? How are you managing it all? Who does what, and how is it all working?
So essentially, from getting into this 10,000 square foot building, believe me, at this point we're at a point to where I cannot do all this by myself. I'm gonna have people. So we got Chelsea as the office manager. She takes care of all the check-ins, the cash outs, the social media, everything that everybody sees from us.
From a customer perspective, I mean, it's good. Like, you have a process. You come in like I brought my truck here to need an alignment, and I was just going to have you do it while I was here. So I come in, she's like, here, I need you to sign the agreement, and we're going to go over it. Here's what it will probably cost. It could be different. We're going to go. And then when I started talking to you, your guys took the truck and they gave it for a test drive. So the process is there. Like, you've got processes in place, which is half the battle for most shops, right?
Absolutely. Yep. And then we got back in 2019, when I grew into that extra 1,500 square feet. You and I have talked about my shop assist for a really long time.
Yep.
And I just didn't feel like I was in that position, but I'll say if anybody is running their business on QuickBooks and have an automotive shop, it is not going to be, the detail I want in the invoices and, the tracking on mileage and the VIN number and all that stuff. I mean, QuickBooks doesn't have any of that stuff. So, of course, adopting in my shop assist. And I remember you told me when I first started, you're like, man, at least give it 6 months. You're going to at least need 6 months to learn the system and do all that. And I think 2019 is when I started that, and we still use it today. And, we love it. Our customers love it. I mean, the fact that we have the ability to, again, all the detail that I'm talking about that we're about, we can put into the work orders and into the invoices. So the pictures, the notes, customers can log into their customer portal and see their progress on their car. I mean, I've gotten over the years just tons and tons of praise on, man, this is a really cool system. Yep. We really can see how transparent you are, the pricing, the authorizations that MSA gives, all that kind of stuff to move forward, doing the work on the car.
And it's important to know that, like, you use it very, very well. So I've seen a lot of, obviously I basically meet with everybody who uses the software at some point in time, and I see how people do it. And you guys definitely in the top, like, 5%.
we challenge you guys.
Well, I love it. So that's the best part, is like when you use it to the full extent, and maybe not every feature, but the features you use them absolutely as good as you possibly can. But what helps me, which helps everybody, is when you guys are like, hey, if it could do this, if the signature could be like easier to sign or whatever it may be, like whatever is you're needing to improve your process, Chelsea messages me. Yep. And you do something. Usually she's the first one. And she's like, hey, this doesn't work as good as I would like it to do. And, we're really quick at like responding to that stuff. And then if it's like a problem, we fix it immediately. But if it's like something you guys would like to do, we try to roll that out as quickly as we can. And I think the product that I sell is much better because of you. So thank you for that.
Again, we wouldn't be where we're at without it. So, it's a one hand scratches the other. One scratches my back, I scratch my back. But it works out really well, and we, again, between, so I have Chelsea, my office manager. She handles, she's the face of, like, when people walk in the door, they're the first, she's the first one that they see, and she kills it. I mean, she is awesome. And she's been able to grow a whole lot in her position, as far as, coming from where she was at, which I think she was doing like dog grooming and things like that, which we kind of thought in the beginning, like, man, that's not the same. And honestly, it is. I mean, she's a, she has services that she provides for people's dogs, and it really went hand in hand with an automotive shop, because we have services that we provide. She knows our morals, our goals, our everything that we want to be doing, what our processes are, and she can explain that to the customer just as you would any other retail business where you're requesting service. So then, obviously, service manager is another really important role that I have here, because he's going to be the guy that, writes the estimates, contacts the customers when there's issues, when, a lot of times people will come in and it's just a diagnostic or it's just a look over. And then, when we find all these things, then he's going to be the one that, sells them and quotes them out. Sure. So yeah, Mitchell is responsible for our parts and our customer, communication. And then this year I've actually adopted a shop foreman role. I have a lead mechanic here, Steve. He's been with me for 3 years now, and he's a rock star in what he does. And I could already see him kind of mentoring and, like, some of the maybe new employees that are still learning, and we're trying to get them up to speed on what we do and how we do it. I just naturally saw him in that more of a manager role, and so this year we actually kind of gave him the official title of shop foreman. So now everything that happens in the shop will go through him. If a technician has an issue, goes through him. Of course, if he needs help or guidance, then he can come to me, no problem. But,
now, do you do anything with, like, sharing with the techs or the shop manager, service manager, the shop foreman, or anything like do you do anything to, like, show them, like, the importance of being efficient and not wasting time, and, like, maybe it's pay, maybe it's, like, going through the reports, maybe it's like walking around the shop with them and explaining, like, hey, like, how do we make this more efficient, and how do we basically, we need to make more money with what we got or with the time we've got. How do we do that? Do you ever do any of that thing like that?
Well, what's been great about my shop assist is you guys log all that stuff. Yep. So, I mean, on a task, we have, the clock in, of what the technician's spending on the time. We obviously see what the time is billed. We have reports for all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it takes a little bit of time to kind of figure out, like, once you start collecting the data, then letting the data kind of show itself. I mean, it takes time. Like, I can't take a week and go, oh, okay, well, here's all our problems, because obviously with what we do, some of the projects, it takes longer than a week to finish a job or to finish a certain task or, whatever. So, we've set up some goals this year when it comes to productivity and, how many hours that we're billing and what we're doing here. So I've spent a lot of time building Excel spreadsheets to kind of input the information that I get from MSA and put it into, what we're revenuing and what we're doing and, all that. So we've got some good goals, some good baseline numbers that we want to try to hit. I'm kind of predicting this year that we have about a 35% increase in sales
for 2025.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I need to put a number on it, and I know that going based off of, okay, if we can make $1 million in 4,500 square feet, and you break it down per square foot of how much each square foot is going to be earning you, or getting you're earning from it. And then scaling that to 10,000 square feet, I'm like, okay, so I definitely haven't, I don't think that I'm going to double, like,
not that fast.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. It's one thing to have the facility, the parts, the, equipment, all that, but then you got to get your crew up to speed too, as far as policies and procedures on what expectations are and kind of efficiencies and what we need to be doing.
Okay. And you guys are using QuickBooks for the accounting side too, right?
Yeah, our general ledger is all QuickBooks.
Okay. QuickBooks Online, right?
QuickBooks Online. Yeah, I've always had online. I never had the desktop version, which is nice because now I don't think I think the desktop version is kind of obsolete.
They just make it more and more expensive and less functional.
Yeah.
So they're pushing everybody the online as much as they can. But okay, so then this one's the interesting one. So we're in this new building here, which is further north, which is it's kind of on the north edge of the Metroplex, I guess you could call it, right? Yep. And so, do you think this location is going to hurt or help you? Obviously, it's a much bigger building, but it's further away. So, does that affect it? Are you still a destination shop, or some of these you don't really get drive-ins ever, right, or drive-ups ever?
So when we moved, I think it's about 15 miles or something north, but we were in Frisco, which is essentially kind of a big,
pretty populous area.
Yeah, very popular area. We got some
and a wealthy area too.
Yeah, it does have some affluence to it. Yeah. We got a little bit of some call it street traffic. Okay. Well, you're just right down the street. Here, let me get this done or get that done. But again, like when it comes to your oil changes and your normal stuff, I mean,
nobody makes money on that anyway. Yeah, unless it's all you do, right?
Yeah, unless it's volume, you know, and it's just that's not what all we do, and either way. So, so moving up here again, being kind of in this niche of suspension and performance and working on all the cars that we work on, they're gonna kind of travel with you a little bit. Okay. I mean, I'm not way out in the outskirts, sure, but we are further north. But I mean, this is kind of what we had to do. I mean, when we were looking for a shop, I mean, for shop owners looking for locations, I mean, it was very difficult because, not only do you have to satisfy the city that you're in, because they have certain zoning and certain things, allowing automotive to go into certain places, but then you also have, either the landlord or, the person leasing the building, or I guess if you have the opportunity to buy, it wouldn't be an issue. But a lot of times, when you say automotive, it gives somebody a really bad taste in their mouth because they just think, you
1,000 junk cars out front, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's going to be a junkyard. It's going to be parts everywhere, oils everywhere. It's a environmental hazard. All this stuff. But again, like as we walked around the shop, I mean, you could eat off the floors here. Yep. So I mean, it's like there's no issues when it comes to that. But so a lot of times when I was trying to find a place and the city would allow it, the person leasing the building is like, no automotive, that's not what we want. And I'm like, before you say no, here's my website, check out what we do, how I operate, how we keep the shop, how we keep the facility. And a lot of them, they really didn't care. I mean, they just
think cars.
Yeah, they think cars. So it took me about 8 months to really find a place that's going to work. So I was very limited on where I could go. I mean, I could maybe find more places further out, but I wanted to stay as close to the end of the Metroplex as I could. And this was kind of our perfect little spot that we found here.
All right. So let's dive into this. So this is the focus topic for this podcast is moving to a new location, with the intent to buy it. Right. So that's the end goal of this. I'm sure it's in your business plan, but, when you were switching from your old building, which, was the 4500 one to this one, kind of walk us through the trials and tribulations of and what you had to do to make this place. I mean, it's a beautiful building, and from my understanding, is it was a piece of shit before. So,
yeah.
So walk us through all that.
So essentially, when you first walked into this place, and I signed our contract or our lease in January, and this building was actually owner occupied. So the owner that was in it, that was leasing it, is still running a business out of it.
Okay.
So essentially on the contract, we gave him 60 days. Like, hey, you got 60 days to move all your stuff out to allow us to come in. And then once that happened in March of 24, it was, I had the keys, it was now mine. I'd love to, I can probably send you just some quick little photos. You can,
before and after.
Yeah, befores and afters. But I mean, this place was a glorified crap hole. I mean, it's
a steel frame building.
It's a steel frame building, and the
chicken wire insulation behind it.
Yep, yeah. Chicken wire insulation. The guy had been in this building for 30 years, so the office was really cheap, nasty carpet, and it just smelled of old dungy funk. So the goal was to, I just feel like your building and your shop, it represents what you do and how you do it. So I wanted to be, my vision was like, I want a Ferrari dealership. I mean, like, I want someone to walk in and go, holy shit, like this is awesome. So we doubled down, and I had the option to either buy the building up front, but I knew that there was going to be quite a bit of renovation costs that I was going to need to put into it. And I just didn't work with the budget at the time. So, I went ahead and signed the lease as like a 5-year lease, and all the first right of refusal stuff and all that, because that was the goal. I mean, I talked to the owner,
and the owner wants to sell it.
Owner does want to sell it. He's kind of at his retirement phase. Sure. He's ready to. This was his retirement kitty, so to speak. Okay. So he's like ready to sell and just kind of go
sail away into the sunset.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, actually, he's a big fisherman, so he wants to just go fish. He wants to, that's
he's
what
gonna have the nicest boat on the lake.
Yeah, exactly. So then talking with him and I established a relationship, and I just kind of let him know, like, hey, the goal is to buy this place from you. I just need a little bit of some time to recoup what I'm about to put in it for renovations. So when I got in, I stripped. Well, ideally, it was going to be putting lipstick on a pig. I mean, it was like, okay, let's do bigger baseboards. Let's repaint everything. Let's take the popcorn off the ceilings. Let's kind of make it nice in the office. I kind of wanted to make the office a little bit bigger for the customer waiting area, because some of the offices were bigger than they needed to be. So the idea was to just kind of go in and change a few things, and obviously trick out the shop. Well, come to find out, we came in and pulled baseboards off and had old water leaks, and it was all kinds of just not good situation stuff. So I ended up having to gut the whole office. So I mean, we took it all the way down to the studs and drywalled everything. Set up different areas around the shop, like took this wall in another 3 feet to allow bigger space for the customer lobby area, and all that kind of stuff. So we did that. I really wanted the shop to be, because again, the future is, our old shop had AC in it, which was a blessing. The techs love it when it's 105 outside, and I can keep it 80 degrees in the shop. I mean, that makes a world of difference. I mean, even 80 degrees isn't great, but it's a whole lot better than 105. Yeah. And that was just because the building and the unit we had was not big enough for the size. Okay. But yeah, so I wanted to, frame out all the walls. I wanted to put, more like plywood up on the wall so I could paint it. At that point now we can hang anything we want to, or whatever, because obviously on an insulated building you can't put anything on the walls because it's just insulation. So yeah, we framed out the whole place, painted the whole place, did 10,000 square foot of epoxy floors. In the office we did a really cool like marble floor epoxy
with like a metallic flaking.
Yeah, like a metallic floor, and it just looked, again, like what I was going for. Is when you walk in here, this is a representation of what we do and how we do it, and I wanted the wow factor more or less. So
success. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
It looks very nice. It's very nice. Okay, so then you've had other problems with. I mean, it wasn't just a matter of like ripping out the office. Do you want to talk about like the water issue with like making sure that like you signed a lease, but then can you actually occupy it? Like, what was the whole deal with that? So
the big kicker when I came aboard, and obviously we have to get our certificate of compliance or occupancy through the city or the county, and as I was in this unit, they gave me a permit to do my renovations. They did all this stuff, and I'm about like 6 or 8 weeks into my renovations. And the fire marshal's like, oh, by the way, you're changing occupancy. This building, being the size that it is going to need a sprinkler system. So the kicker is, where we're at is in the county. So the infrastructure is not up to date with city ordinances that they're going off of, or county ordinances they're going off of. So one of the big kickers was, okay, we need to do a fire suppressant system in here and a sprinkler system, but we have no water to tap into. I mean, we have a 2-inch pipe that comes and supplies the building, where
you'll run your bath or your toilet and your sink, right?
Yeah. So it's like, okay,
hose maybe,
and everything you do now has to stay up to code. Well, up to code is, you gotta have a 6-inch water line, and you gotta tap into that, and you gotta have, a riser room, and and it's easy to do when you're on city water, because they have the supply of it. But out here in the county, which is funny because we're only like maybe a quarter mile into the county, so we're just right there on the skirts, of the city. So, none of the infrastructure was here. So then, I started talking to contractors and talking to people about sprinklers, and they're like, their plan was to put a 60,000 gallon tank, storage tank on the property to then fill to where that if the sprinklers ever happen to need to go off, that would be where the water supply was.
Okay.
So not something that's feasible. I mean, I don't know let's just say, for instance, your average pool is probably 10 to 15,000 gallons. They wanted 60,000 gallons of a tank. I mean, we're talking like I'd have a silo. Like I'd have the BSP silo out here. It would have been huge, and it just wasn't effective because the other thing is that it's only a matter of time before some of this, being so close to the city limits,
they're going to eventually
to annexate it. They're going to take it on, and then they're going to have to put water out. All this stuff. So. Then we started really working with the fire marshals because the guy that was in here before, he was manufacturing. I mean, he was doing, rubber manufacturing. I mean, he was doing all kinds of stuff. Well, cars and manufacturing kind of go hand in hand a little bit.
Okay.
So, it took about 6 weeks and a whole lot of nail biting and butt puckering. And, we were able to convince him, working through the loopholes of the ordinances and the laws. Because, the sprinkler system would have been detrimental. Like, I didn't have another $200,000 to put a sprinkler system in this place. And then for something to not really be, something that was going to be a short-term thing, because another 10 years, if they do put water out here, then a silo and all this stuff is going to be obsolete. It's not going to work. So we were able to, work with the county and kind of really figure out what it was going to take and what we needed to do. I opted to train all of my employees in fire safety.
Okay.
I opted to, I'll put a freaking fire hydrant or
every 5 feet.
Seriously, I'll put a fire extinguisher every 5 feet if you want me to.
One on every lift, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, I'll do whatever you want, but we just got to try to find out a loophole around this sprinkler system. So either way, that took about 6 weeks. And at that point, I'd already put in, a substantial amount of money that I was not going to get back out of it to just bail out and walk away.
Could you have walked away according to the lease if they weren't going to give you a certificate of occupancy?
Yeah, I could have. I probably could have.
Okay. But you just would have lost all the investment.
I would have lost all the investment, and then on top of that, I still didn't have a place to go.
Right.
I mean, because I had already set up, my 90-day notice in my current building that I was in, the 4500, and it wasn't going to work. That wasn't an option to just walk away.
Sure.
We would literally be sitting in that building still and not doing anything that we.
It's crazy to think that you planned it out so well and you got the lease, and then something can throw you a curveball like that literally can just shut it all down immediately.
Yep.
And you can't plan for that because you don't know.
Nope. And that's where, again, the coaching and, it's like, okay, how are we going to react to this? Like, how are we going to problem solve? How are we going to, instead of just, sometimes it's really easy just to throw a match on it, douse it in gasoline and throw a match on it and walk away. That wasn't going to be an option. And we fought really hard to make it happen. So after about 6 weeks of having, the floors were done, the walls were done. I mean, everything was kind of coming together besides the equipment. I got a call from the fire marshal, and they, after further review and analysis and all the stuff, they deemed it being, what we were doing here was no different than what he was, the previous owner was doing before. So he's like, kind of got lucky on this deal, but we're going to allow you to grandfather in without it.
Okay.
So that was my blessing, honestly, because without that, I would be not in this building, and I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
So that was a huge, moment of a make or break for us.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's crazy to think that I think really from an outside perspective of this is something you did exceptionally well was you had just a stockpile of cash ready to do this. You didn't have to borrow money for all of it. I mean, you said you had money ready to do it and you had a plan and you were ready to move forward. I mean, that really made it possible, because if you got all the equipment ready to go and then all of a sudden you're 6 weeks on hold and you didn't and you're borrowing money for all that, you would have been stuck, right? Then you would have been out of everything and you couldn't finish, right?
Yeah, I mean, essentially it took me 3 years to, as we were growing, it took me 3 years to stack, a substantial amount of money to where I could do all this and almost pay for it all in cash.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that's a huge risk too as well. But, I guess without risk, there's no reward. So, I mean,
Dave Ramsey would be very proud of you.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, three years in stacking to be able to make the decisions that we did and do all this. And I mean, there's a point in time that, I mean, obviously the 6-week delay, I mean, I was supposed to already be in here, and I was supposed to be in here in May. And then we actually didn't move in until July, the end of July. So at this point now, per my contract, with the lease and stuff here, is I was paying rent full here as well as the other place. I was paying utilities, I mean, electric, gas, I mean, trash. I mean, I literally had 2 businesses and I was only making income on one. So it was a little tricky. But again, if I hadn't have been smart and kind of made some of the decisions that I made, then we, again, would not even be here at all. So.
Okay. So, I mean, this is a question we always ask is like, what's something exciting that you're doing right now? I'm assuming getting this building up and running has kind of been the highlight of your career.
I'm a huge, again, going back to the road racing, I'm a huge data guy. I mean, I love data. I love looking at, AIM data, looking at, anything that I can that I can relate off of. And more or less now we have the facility, we have the equipment. So we went from, the 3 2-post lifts and 1 alignment rack to now we've doubled all that. So I have my big bottleneck was the alignment rack, doing corner balancing and scaling and doing all that. That takes an all-day deal, but then, for instance, when you brought your truck in, hey, can I get an alignment done? I'm like, hey, sorry, I got a race car on there. I can't do it today. So I made a decision, and not even many dealerships have 2 alignment racks,
right.
But yeah, I was like, you know what, let's do it. Let's have two alignment racks, so that way that never is a bottleneck for us. Okay. So we've doubled the 2 posts, so now we have 6, and then we have 2 alignment racks. And that's a 4-post. I chose to do a 4-post instead of a scissor because I like to be able to move underneath the car and underneath the rack. And with the scissor lift, that doesn't really give you that option. So now I guess what's exciting now is the fact of like, okay, we have the facility, we have the equipment. Now let's work on the employee culture. Let's work on our processes. Let's work on how to become really efficient in the building that we're in, and let's make the best of it. Because I mean, again, I know that this place, is potential. I can gross $2+ million a year in our business from this space. So now it's just like, that's the goal, is like, how do we get there?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you just mentioned this, like, you've got 2 alignment racks, in the process you set up, make it easier to train those guys, or do you hire them in knowing how to do an alignment, or are you kind of like, you don't care as long as they know how to work on a car, you can show them what you want? Yeah. Like, how does that kind of work out for you?
That's been a little bit tricky because, I would say how we do alignments, no one does alignments. I mean, the fact of us, for those of the listeners that are listening that knows how to do an alignment where they're doing, compensations. So essentially you put the car up, you have to roll it to compensate it for the machine to recognize, okay, here's all your alignment angles, this is all your stuff. You can easily just compensate it once and set it all in the green and ship it. But then I'm like the guy that plays devil advocate that's like, okay, let me go drive around the parking lot. Let me put it back on the machine, put the heads back on. Does it give me the same numbers? Is it my printout? Yeah. So, and a lot of times with one compensation, it does not. I mean, you're not, like I deal with cars in racing that have limit, like, the spec of SCCA for like an ST3 car or the street touring cars, they require 3.5 degrees of camber and no more. So if my machine is a 0.5 degree off and I'm like, okay, well, the machine says it's set up to 3.5, and then they go and race it, and then they pull into tech because they podiumed or whatever, and then they put the little gauge on the wheel and it's 4 degrees, then that's a DNF. I mean, essentially you now didn't win. So there's a lot riding on these numbers, and I take it very, very seriously. So, when it comes to training people, I really, I've tried green, a lot of green guys of like, hey, they don't know anything, but that's good because they don't have bad habits. Yeah. Let's train them. A lot of times some of those employees I've trained so well, then they end up, wanting to do their own thing, or they go somewhere else, and it's like, oh, great. Now all that training, is for nothing. But yeah, so when it comes to that, I mean, we don't do alignments like normal people. So I need to find somebody that maybe has done an alignment before, but somebody that I can mold and I can train. And it's like, look, I know you've done it one way for 10 years or whatever. Some of the new employees that we've hired, I've kind of set some bars because, again, we work on some high-end stuff and very technical with what we do. So hiring somebody fresh out of school or whatever is not really going to be the guy for me. Sure. So now we've kind of put limitations on, hey, you need to at least have 8 years of experience, 10 years of experience. So they know a little bit. And then, I spend the time with them for the first couple weeks on, hey, we're going to do alignments all day with each other. I'm going to show you exactly how I want it done. And this is how we now operate, more or less.
Okay. So now you've got your 1 million revenue plus. You're in 10,000 square foot building. I mean, you have a lot of room in here. Is there any other services you want to offer? Like, are you looking to expand what you can do, or you just want to kind of like keep growing what you are doing and kind of stick to the formula that's been working for you?
So we're, obviously still doing performance work. I mean, a dyno, as you know, is huge. To be able to...
You gonna bring one in?
Yeah, we've talked about it. But yeah, I mean, I do want to expand a little bit. Essentially, the money that we spent in here and the space. I mean, 10,000 square feet is a lot, right?
Yep.
But as you walk around,
You've got it occupied pretty well.
I've got it occupied. I mean, it filled pretty quick, and that just shows how packed we were in the 4,500. Because then it all, So yeah, no, I do want to be able to offer. I mean, I really want to be, besides paint and body work, I'd love to be a one-stop shop to where, if I put, a supercharger on your car or turbo or whatever kind of performance mod, I can dyno it in-house and tune it, because right now we outsource that.
Sure.
So and that's not very cost effective for us, because it's either mostly myself is the one that's doing all that kind of stuff. So we modify a car, and sometimes if it doesn't even run, I'm either having to get a remote tune on it with our tuners that we work with to get it running for me so I can drive it. Or we're literally having to tow it not running to another shop
that can tune it.
Yeah, that can tune it. I mean, obviously, I've rented the dyno from you quite a bit. So I mean, like I said, we do want to take on definitely being able to at least have a dyno in here. Mm-hmm. Just it goes along with everything that we do.
Sure.
And got the suspension down, got the top end of the performance stuff down.
So paint and body never.
Yeah, I mean,
build an engine building room in the corner or something.
Yeah, I mean, again, some of that is a huge liability, and as I'm like an expert in the suspension, a machinist knows machining stuff, and building short blocks and long blocks and all that. So, and obviously the tools involved with it, all the machining equipment and everything involved. So, for now I'm just trying to stay in my lane, more or less, but yeah, I mean, when it comes to the paint and body, I mean, we install splitters and wings and, do some, add-on cosmetic stuff. But the one thing that we won't ever do is like a gas monkey thing where it's like, hey, you bring me a barn find that's all rusted out.
Like a restoration.
And I'm going to do a full restoration where it's painting, it's metal work, it's engine work, it's suspension. It's, it's a one-stop shop when it comes to that. I don't think we'll ever, be at that point, but...
Okay. And then, I mean, as far as like where your revenue comes from, I mean, most of it's going to be service, but you do sell parts, which are primarily other people's parts. Are you looking at making your own stuff? Like,
I've done on a couple of platforms that we work on. I've developed some parts with clutches with Tilton that's primarily work on just the BRZs or the FRS platform. I've done some things where some cool stuff that's provides a lot of benefit, but I haven't really ran with it. Okay. Getting into CAD. I mean, we have 3D printers here, and messing with CAD to where if we need to build a little or design a one-off part or whatever, it's most by case basis. Obviously the automotive industry is very competitive when it comes to a car's brand new, just out, and then there's already people making parts for it. So it's kind of hard to,
I know, right?
I mean, there's only so many things you can make for a car. Right. So,
and then there's only so many ways you can design that part. So as soon as you the solution is very obvious and one person makes it and then another person makes the same thing and then they accuse each other of copying it, it's like, well, it's a tube, right? Like, how many ways can you make an intake? Like it goes from there to there. You make it curved or a slight bend or pie cut it, like it's all going to go the same direction. So
and I've thought about hiring more like engineers to come work here, but it's just really about keeping them busy. It's like, hey, let's design this one part. I think that would be really cool, but then it's continuing to keep designing and keep evolving and keep going, which is that it's not something I've advertised for, and that's just not something I think that would
I feel like you could probably freelance a lot of that stuff. So if you have a part that you want to make and you just want like an actual SolidWorks expert to do it, you probably could just like, hey, here's what I want and do it. Or if you need someone to 3D scanner, I'm sure somebody has them. You don't need to go buy one. Just get it done once,
or
right?
like a like a Haas 5-axis CNC machine.
Yeah.
Like I have some friends here locally in the DFW area that own their own businesses that have that, and essentially they have no problems with if I was able to design a part and bring them a CAD program or a G code, and I can say, here, like start cutting this for me, and then hey, going from plastic on a 3D printer to then I was start making it out of metal, and then kind of running with it. So yeah, again, like instead of me spending $150,000 on a Haas CNC machine, it's like I can
until you're manufacturing millions of dollars worth of your own parts, not necessary, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then I guess the last part about your business here. What do you find works best for like promoting yourself? I mean, you do a lot of stuff, track days. You did a grand opening event. Do you do market or like advertising and stuff? What else do you do?
We're working on, Chelsea's developing, my office manager. She's, developing her skills in marketing. She's taken on some marketing classes and some stuff that she's been doing, in her time. That's, obviously helping develop her and but also helps us, she works for us. So we have in January, we're going to come up with a marketing strategy of how we're going to do 2025 more or less.
Okay.
Definitely is going to involve car shows and just kind of being present at, road racing tracks or drag racing tracks or whatever. But a lot of it, man, is just really caring about what you do and what you produce. And it's just word of mouth. I mean, my business has grown over the last 12 years based on producing results for people and doing a good job at doing it and, meeting people's expectations.
Okay, so that's great. We learned all about your business. So let's move on to the quick answer questions here. So give us a game-changing product you've seen in the last year. What's crazy is everybody has struggled with this question. I think it's because like the performance world has really slowed down at developing new stuff.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any really unique, cool concepts in a while, huh?
I mean, definitely giving, like one thing that the manufacturers don't really care about is giving adjustment for, being a suspension guy, right? So, I don't know how many times that cars come in and like their alignment numbers are definitely out of spec or they're going to cause tire wear and I don't have any way to adjust it. So, a lot of the things that some of the businesses and the companies that we work for, just developing arms and developing adjustments. And then it's one thing to develop, I don't know how many times I've adjusted arms that are like a Heim joint at the end of an arm, but the only way to adjust it is you have to
take it off.
You got to take it off.
So
and
it's not a true, not end links on both sides.
So I call that an off-car adjustment. It's kind of like, you have on-car adjustments, which I can do literally on the alignment rack and I can see it happen. Where off-car is going to be like, okay, now I've got to lift it up, take the heads off, take the tires off, take the suspension apart, do some adjustments, throw it all back together, and then see that I guessed, or I'm not really guessing so much anymore because now I've kind of calculated like, okay, on a Heim that has a certain amount, a thread pitch, I know that for every revolution that'll give me a certain amount of camber adjustment or whatever. So, but I would just say, the guys that are developing the aftermarket adjustments for us, because again, if you bring me a car with adjustment, the ability to be able to adjust, there's not anything under the sun that I can't do, to it and get a number out of it.
Okay, so do you have a favorite app that you use daily, like a game or a finance or whatever it may be?
Here lately, I've been getting into the crypto stuff.
Okay.
So, do some of the crypto apps,
Coinbase?
and exchanges. Coinbase, the Webull.
Okay.
As well as the crypto.com. So, that's kind of where a long time ago, I stopped playing games on my phone. Like, I remember when Pokemon was a big thing.
Their time suck, man. Their time suck.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I find myself, even with social media, I hate it, but I love it, because social media is where we advertise. But man, Facebook, Instagram, it's all a huge time suck, and you just get stuck in that scrolling,
Now, here's a question for you. Have you taken crypto as a payment yet?
I have not. I have not. I know. I remember that, like, when we talked years back, you're like, yeah, I'll take a Bitcoin, and back when that was, it was cheap. Bitcoin was, a couple $100 or $1,000, and now look at it now. So, honestly,
So that anybody that cares, honest to God, a transaction in Bitcoin is easier than anything. Cash, credit card, all of it.
well, and that's kind of where the crypto currency is going.
I don't know why it hasn't completely taken off, because it's so easy. Like,
well,
at least from a business perspective.
I think after the 20th, that's all going to change.
Yeah, Trump, because he's very pro,
pro crypto.
and I have no doubt in my mind he has socked away a shit ton of Bitcoin to watch that stuff just skyrocket, right? Yep. Although the bump has already occurred from the election, because people already knew that was coming, I think. Yep. So, but yeah, I mean, like, from a business perspective, the benefits of it are it's not reversible, so you can't do chargeback. The fees on it are next to nothing. So as long as you keep it in cryptocurrency, I mean, it's like, 0.01% on a transaction most of the time. And it depends on which coin you're using as well. But they're all basically instant. Like within 5 minutes, they're all in your account and ready to go. And like it's all online anyway. So like everybody is already paying with credit cards through web portals and stuff. So why does it make a difference if it's through a credit card, which is going to take 3% of it basically every time, always? Yep. Versus a crypto, which is, and the complaint I have always had, or not I've always had, but I always hear, is that like the volatility of it makes it so like if you take $100,000 in Bitcoin on day one, on day two, is it worth 50,000 or is it 150,000?
I mean, it's definitely a risk. Definitely a risk. I mean, going back to, I was thinking of something, so an app. So nowadays, there's got apps and it's advertised that you can do an alignment off an app.
Oh,
so
yeah.
your phone itself and all the X and Y,
because it's using the accelerometers in there to measure the tilt and stuff, right?
So there's some apps that I was kind of leery on or whatever, and there's some guys that I know in the industry that have done alignments with these apps, and going back and kind of double checking it or whatever, I'm like, well, that would work. I mean, that's close enough.
Okay, here's your marketing. Here's your marketing thing. Have Chelsea put this together. You need to take one of those, do a full alignment with the phone app, then put it on your dyno and compare them. Yeah. Now the good.
Well, I've done it.
Okay.
And like I said, it's close.
Okay.
It's close. I mean, close enough for it would work, but it wouldn't be what I would produce. I mean, like I said, there's still some cleanup stuff that I would do, and but either way, the fact that you're sitting on your garage floor, which isn't even a level surface to begin with, and you're using your phone to come up with these measurements, and like I said, it was close enough. I was actually impressed. I'm like, wow, that's pretty clever, but I still don't think that it's gonna.
Because they also have.
I'm not going to lose business because someone can use their phone for their alignment. Because half the time it's like they don't know what even to adjust or how to adjust it. So
because they also have like 3D printed shells that mount up onto the tire for your phone, right? That was like the whole gimmick, is like you can download the file, print it on your 3D printer, download the app, and then do your own alignment, right? If you know what you're doing, it totally
if your
depends
wheel surface, the face of the wheel sometimes hangs out past the lip, so then you're not getting a flat, area or surface to mount that little bracket to your phone on. So there's a couple things that it wouldn't work, but for the most part, I've seen it actually work pretty well. So.
Okay, and then I'm guessing this is your alignment rack, but what is your favorite shop tool?
I mean, honestly, our fabrication side of things. Okay. I really love building stuff. I love making things and coming up with an idea and kind of putting it out there.
Doing it.
And without welders and TIG welders and MIG welders and bandsaws and without all that kind of stuff, it wouldn't be really possible. We've got some tube benders and things like that where we can start getting into crash bars and roll cages and doing all that kind of stuff. So besides the alignment rack, obviously being my number one tool that I use here that I know like the back of my hand, it would really just be some of our fabrication stuff that we have. Okay.
And what kind of car are you driving right now?
So right now, and it's kind of funny because I want to get the passion back. I still have my Evo 9.
Oh, yeah.
So
we've talked about this every time we talk a little bit about it. Like I need to get it out.
Original owner on a Evo 9 SE, and there's not very many of those. So a lot of times people are like, why don't you sell it? I'm like, because I could never replace a 70,000 mile original owner 06, Evo 9. But yeah, so the Play Toy shop toy is the Evo. And then, I drive an 02 Chevy pickup for my daily. And And, you know, again, working on cars all day long has kind of made it to where play projects and play toys and things like that are just, you know, and then now having a 2-year-old daughter and then having another one on the way, it's like it's kind of a time
Few and
suck
far
to where,
between,
yeah,
yeah.
where projects. But I look forward to my uncle last year had passed away, and I inherited some of his project stuff, and he has some Datsun 280Zs.
Oh, old ones. Fun.
Oldson, yeah.
In decent shape, or you got to restore the whole
No, they're in decent shape. One of them he's already restored on a rotisserie and actually put a Velarosa kit together on it. So the Velarosa kit is essentially turning it into a
Daytona Ferrari or whatever it is.
The GTO Ferrari. It kind of looks very similar and all the, you know, different.
Don't they do like V8 conversions and all those things too?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's you know, so I was able to. I haven't had time to play with it too much, but that's going to be a project that we'll probably end up starting to dive into, because him and I had some goals and some dreams about taking it, doing like one lap of America with it, and doing all that, and I just kind of want to live that out for him. So you know, that'll be a nice project for this year.
Okay. And we like to take action here. So what is something you would suggest to other people to improve their situation?
I mean, man, definitely invest into yourself, whether that be, you know, a piece of equipment that you're on the edge, like, do I need to buy? I mean, if you really think it's going to develop you better as either owning a business or being able to provide you income, kind of do it. Jump. I mean, like, you know, being an entrepreneur is already the first step of, you know, jumping off the cliff and, you know, kind of making it work. 'Cause that's a scary thing. But I would just say to anybody, just would be to invest into yourself, because honestly, you're going to be able to give yourself a better return than really anything. Right. As long as you have the drive and you have the, the worth ethic.
The struggle is real.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a thing that Tony Robbins had said where he was making like $2,000 or $20,000 a year, and then he bought this $2 million house, and he was like, I didn't have a choice. Like, I had to make more money. And then I think within a year, he took a $20,000 business and turned it into a $2 million business. And obviously, look at him now. So, but yeah, I mean, self-development, you know, some of these coaches and some of these people online. I mean, you got podcasts, you got
a lot of books,
TikTok, books. I mean, I got tons of self-development books and all kinds of things that really, really, you know, sit well with me as far as, like, you know, being able to learn and grow from them. So
okay. And what do you think the future of automotive performance is going to be? Man,
with the EPA and all that, I mean, it's kind of unknown to me. I mean, I know that when it comes to what I do, suspension wise, I mean, everybody's going to want their car to look different. Yeah. I mean, I'll be fine.
And it works on EVs too. So
exactly. Yeah. So, and you know, EVs or even maybe if we're going to go hydrogen powered cars now or whatever, but, you know, suspension's always, I think, going to be safe, you know, wheel fitments and, you know, getting the car to look right. But, you know, it's definitely uncertain, just because I know that like you said, like the you know, the aftermarket part world and the performance world has slowed down as far as development, because there's been so many hurdles and so many hoops people have to jump through in order to keep things EPA compliant and all that, which is really what's stunted the growth of
I think a lot of it has to do with the cars that manufacturers are making now too. They just basically make them like non-modifiable, or I mean, you know, like an Evo, when you bought them new, you could like immediately buy a bunch of mods and like 50% more power. I mean, there's a few makes that can do that. I think the BMWs and the Audis respond really well to mods, but like, I mean, how many other cars can you even like?
Well, I mean, the other thing is the manufacturers are now knowing that. I mean, it's a kind of a measuring competition of, like, you know,
how much power,
how much power you can make. I mean, you got the Hellcat that's, you know, off the showroom floor that makes, you know, 700 or you know, whatever, and then now you've got the Z06s and the new Corvette, the C8 ZR1, and you know, so really, like, the manufacturers are spending the time to, like, okay, how do we, you know, I mean, there's a lot of cars that, besides the rumble noise, a camshaft isn't going to give you any more power because it's already been optimized. You know, you've got all the variable valve timing now with all these cars, and It's just, like I said, mods aren't really doing as much as they used to. I mean, again, the manufacturers used to always leave so much on the table, and everything is so super conservative.
And the engines were very, very stout, cast iron blocks, and now they're all aluminum blocks, right?
Made out of freaking plastic. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of like, I guess, the downfall in some of the performance side of things.
Okay. And how do we connect with you and your company?
So with us, we have our social medias. So we have BSP Motorsports, and that's on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Best way to get us is either by phone or by email. Our email is contact@bspmotorsports.com. We also have our website, bspmotorsports.com, which we have, if you want to get a hold of us or, get a quote or schedule an appointment or whatever, we have all that based off our website. It makes it a lot easier for the team to stay, all on the same page and in the loop on that. But, just about anywhere you just type in BSP Motorsports and you'll find us.
Okay. Well, Brandon, I really appreciate you giving me a tour of your facility here and taking the time to share your story.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast app, tap the subscribe button. When you subscribe, you help us gain momentum and attract more high-level guests. Thanks for listening, and good luck.